to get those documents back like
Joe
you
Biden
did. And so
took
that's the question.
1,850 boxes.
But that's the question that investigators have, I think, is why you held on to those documents when you knew the federal government was seeking them and then had given you a subpoena to return them.
Are you ready? Are you ready? Can I talk?
Yeah, what's the
mind?
answer?
Do you mind?
I would like for you to answer the question.
Okay, it's very simple to answer.
That's why I asked it.
It's very simple to, you're a nasty person, I'll tell you.
Ladies and gentlemen, it is a great day here in America because CNN has been evicted. That is right. They have been kicked out of their office at the Pentagon by Pete Hegseth and the Trump administration, and it is objectively a really funny thing to see. Now, I first do want to say, before anyone tries to whine or cry about press freedom, they're saying this is a mass censorship event that's going to set a really bad precedent for American administrations. I do want to point out this is nothing out of the ordinary, right? As it turns out, basically what's happening here is the Department of Defense has a number of offices that they reserve for news media outlets. And basically, every few years, those outlets are rotated, right? So every time you have a new presidential administration, especially, some years CNN will have it, some years it'll be ABC News, some years it'll be Fox, right? But this is a normal thing that happens. But nonetheless, despite the fact that this was fully expected, and again, nothing crazy is really happening here, that, of course, did not stop the folks over at CNN crying political persecution about it. As you can see right here, Brian Stelter is insinuating that the only reason the Trump administration kicked them out is because of political reasons, which, yes, I'm sure to some degree there are political reasons why we're kind of trolling you in the situation. But again, this is not censorship. This is not something crazy. This happens all the time. You're not entitled to that office in the Pentagon. And so that is exactly what is happening here. And we're going to tell you all about that and more in today's video, because objectively, it has been a really bad week overall for CNN in Washington, and this is far from the only story, but it is kind of a great illustration of that. But first, folks, do us a favor. If you enjoy the content, make sure you are subscribed. Hit that red button, subscribe to the channel, because that's the best way to support our work. And with that said, so what you see right here is a photograph of how CNN left behind their office at the Department of Defense. And do you notice anything? No class, okay? It should be the no class network, okay? That's what's happening. Take the C of CNN, put it in the middle. No class network, because as you can tell right here, they left the place a total mess. Okay, I kid you not. This is the actual photograph of how CNN left their office behind at the Department of Defense. And you can see it's not just like random stuff on the ground. They left a water bottle cap. You can't even pick up the freaking water bottle cap. How lazy, how reckless are these journalists? They definitely live with a silver spoon. That's to say the least. But I do want to say, I know there's no accountability in the government, obviously. But let me just point out that if you leave a hotel room or an Airbnb like this, you're going to get an incidental charge from the hotel. If you move out of an apartment and your landlord comes back and finds this, they're probably going to charge you a cleaning fee or take that money out of your security deposit. So I know, like, in the government, you're just allowed to do whatever you want because, you know, the standards of regular people never apply to people who are working with or within the government. But, you know, I think it'd be objectively be really funny. The Trump administration should definitely charge CNN a $100 cleaning fee for this, because just take a look at that. Just completely classless and hilarious. But you have to imagine they're not very happy, right? They probably trashed the place on purpose out of bitterness, because it has not been a good week, like I said, for CNN overall. And that is especially true of Kaitlin Collins' recent experiences in the White House, which we also got to talk about, because CNN is just, in general, spiraling out of control here.
Mr. President, you won the White House in part because of high inflation. If your tariffs make prices go up...
Excuse me, we haven't asked you to speak yet, please. Okay. Go ahead, please.
You won the White House in part...
Go ahead, please.
That's exactly why it is important to understand that CNN getting booted out of the Pentagon is not the start. It is the end. It is the culmination of what has been a very rough past couple of days in their experience dealing with the Trump administration, because it all even started here with Kaitlin Collins. So as you may have seen, over the weekend, Trump decided to put a photograph of his mugshot, right? He has it framed, as you can see right here, in the Oval Office. And basically, the way that it is hung up is so that that every time anyone enters, right, walks into the Oval Office, they have to walk past and see this mugshot. So apparently next week, Trump is going to be meeting with some of the Democrat politicians within Congress. They're going to have to see it. And over the weekend, when Trump hosted reporters within the Oval Office, Kaitlin Collins herself had to see it. And she apparently was not very happy about this. She was completely melting down over the fact that she had to see that hilarious and awesome and iconic photograph. And well, take a listen. This is CNN's Current Time in Washington.
Not only have we never had a U.S. president with a mugshot, I'm not sure we've ever had a mugshot hanging outside of the Oval Office before. But that is where President Trump has placed his from when he was indicted in Fulton County, Georgia, for his efforts to overturn the election. We learned a few days ago he is a framed cover of the New York Post with his mugshot just outside the Oval Office in what is known as the Outer Oval. Now, we discovered this when he was greeting the Indian Prime Minister. They were seated in chairs in front of the fireplace in the Oval, but just over the shoulder of his chief of staff, Susie Wiles, you could see the president's mugshot there as he has it framed. His aide and person who is his social media guru, really, Dan Scavino, posted a video of it saying, "Happy Valentine's Day" from the beautiful Oval Office. This has really become a rallying cry that Trump has used on the campaign trail. They've even put it on merch and sold it featuring his mugshot. And now it has a home outside the Oval Office as well.
So see exactly what I mean, right? They're just having a rough week in general. They've been kicked out of the Pentagon. You have Kaitlin Collins just bitter. She's just seething over the fact that she has to see that hilarious and awesome photograph, which, by the way, is proof that trolling works, okay? You always wonder why MAGA trolls people so much. Well, it's because we know we're going to elicit very over-the-top and dramatic reactions like this. Like, she has to do an entire news report on her phone about how they're putting up the mugshot. How can Trump do this? This is so terrible. Why are you celebrating this? Like, Kaitlin, I have the answer for you. Okay, I know you're like, we're so shocked to find this out. Why are they doing this? Okay, you want the reason? You want to know why Trump put the mugshot up in the Outer Oval? It's because it's hilarious. Okay, it's hilarious. It's iconic. It's a reminder, by the way, of what you guys tried to do to him. But on top of that, he just knows it's going to be really funny for people like you to have to walk into the Oval Office and see that. Okay, so, yeah. And by filming this video, you have exactly done what he wants you to do, right? He wants you to seethe over it. He wants you to have a hilarious meltdown that everyone can laugh at, that you can look ridiculous about. And in the end, basically he put out bait for CNN, and CNN took the bait. So just a fantastic week again you guys are having. You guys are, disgracing yourself every single day in the press briefings. You try to interrupt Trump in the middle of him signing an executive order to ask a question, and he's like, no, not your turn to speak. How rude of you, by the way. How rude of you, Kaitlin Collins. But guys, it's not just Kaitlin Collins that's having a bad time. It's not just the CNN reporters within the Pentagon that are really struggling this week. We are even getting the meltdown from fired CNN employees, right? Former CNN employees like Jim Acosta, who, let's not forget, earlier this month was canned by CNN after it turned out that nobody was watching his show anymore.
It's covered on CNN. What you're saying, this is not Fox, Congressman. You can't just spin a tail and pull the wool over people's eyes. Yeah. This is CNN. This is the news. We are asking you to come on and tell the truth.
And that's why more people are watching the Cartoon Network SpongeBob reruns right now, Jim.
I just wanted to end today's show by thanking all of the wonderful people who work behind the scenes at this network. You may have seen some reports about me and the show. And after giving all of this some careful consideration and weighing an alternative time slot CNN offered me, I've decided to move on. I am grateful to CNN for the nearly 18 years I've spent here doing the news. It is never a good time to bow down to a tyrant. I've always believed it's the job of the press to hold power to account. I've always tried to do that here at CNN, and I plan on doing all of that in the future. One final message. Don't give in to the lies. Don't give in to the fear. Hold on to the truth and to hope. Even if you have to get out your phone, record that message. I will not give in to the lies. I will not give in to the fear. Post it on your social media.
So let's do the where are they now type of thing, right? Because it turns out that despite the fact that Jim Acosta has been let go by CNN because they're going to move him to the midnight slot. They were basically going to deport him from primetime television. He still wants to be part of the club. It's kind of pathetic. At least someone like Chris Cuomo, when they got fired by CNN, they left and they understood it. And they were like, nope, I'm out. I don't want anything to do with these people. You still have Jim Acosta and Brian Stelter and Don Lemon and people like that. They're still trying to do the thing. They still want to be a part of this club, even though they kicked him out. And now what you have Jim Acosta going out and saying, apparently, I don't know, maybe he's upset, right? Maybe he's upset that he's no longer able to be a White House reporter. He can no longer sit around and berate Trump for, 30 minutes straight and yell at him and do all this stuff. So what he's now calling for, guys, I kid you not, is for the press to boycott the White House, right? He wants the White House Press Corp to boycott the Trump administration. And this comes as the Associated Press was temporarily banned from the White House press briefings after they refused to refer to the Gulf of America as the Gulf of America, right? They were still calling it the Gulf of Mexico. And so what Jim Acosta is now saying is that all of the liberal news media should unite and boycott the Trump administration. Because apparently the central insinuation there is so stupid, right? Is that the Trump administration is censoring the press, and that's bad. It's not really true, right? You don't have an inherent right to go and cover the White House, okay? I'm still waiting for my new media pass to be approved, by the way, right? I'm not sitting here and saying I'm being censored by the Trump administration because I'm not being allowed in. But nonetheless, but in response to that, in response to the so-called censorship, you're just going to have the media not cover the Trump White House at all. So they're going to not give information to the American people because Trump is censoring information. So you're going to censor yourselves. This is what he's saying. Censor yourself to boycott Trump censoring you. Okay, nonetheless, that's Jim Acosta's brilliant strategy. Let's tune in and take a listen to his explanation of that, because he is, still trying to clout chase despite the fact that he is irrelevant. All right, take a listen.
Yeah, I mean, I think we've reached a point now where, I think the press needs to do a bit more. And that's a tough nut to crack. As I found, covering him the first time around, it's a little like herding cats trying to get everybody in the press corps to act in a uniform fashion. But when you have the White House banning the AP from the Oval Office, banning the AP from Air Force One, and just to explain this to people, I mean, the Associated Press, the AP, is an institution that's been around for over 100 years. They're in about 100 countries. They're in all 50 states. I believe their journalism is read and viewed by, some 4 billion people around the world. And just about every...
Really? 4 billion people read the AP? Jim Acosta? I'm going to rate that fact check as cannot be verified, likely false. Okay? 4 billion people read the Associated Press. Really?
News outlet in the United States relies on the Associated Press. So when the White House kicks the AP out of the Oval Office, off of Air Force One, it has a major impact on the information that people are receiving around this country. And I just don't think it's something that should be, should just be tolerated at this point. I think that the AP should look at whether or not they should sue the administration. I think the AP needs to, look at other options in terms of what can be done. And I think the rest of the press corps needs to start giving some serious consideration to whether or not it's worth, sending everybody into the Oval Office, sending everybody on Air Force One, sending everybody into the briefing room. And I know that some of my friends over there at the White House Press Corp will say, hang on a second, how are we supposed to cover this guy? I understand that. It's difficult if we're not there.
So again, just to reiterate, that's exactly his argument. He's saying, if you ban the AP from the White House, that affects how Americans can receive information, right? You're basically blocking out informative news to the American people. And his brilliant big brain solution to this is because of that. Because we're mad that one outlet is being banned from the White House and now cannot cover it effectively, every other outlet should refuse to cover the White House. And according to him, right, the logic here, then the Trump administration can, only have their arguments be made. The press cannot push back on them because that's what he thinks the media is meant to do. He thinks the media is meant to just criticize Trump. So the press is not, in order to stop the censorship by Trump, we should censor ourselves. It doesn't really make any sense, okay? Like I said, I think that the only reason he's saying this, right, is because he's no longer the White House press correspondent. If he was still there, you think he would censor himself? You think he would boycott the press room? No. He's crying because he doesn't have a job anymore. He is unemployed. Okay, just saying. And, he's mad at everyone else. He's mad at the people who still do have jobs in the White House, okay? Because that's just what he wishes he was. This overgrown theater kid is not having a good time. But anyways, there's Jim Acosta, which of course leads us all to our main story today, which is the fact that it gets even worse because now the Pentagon has kicked out the CNN and the Washington Post from the workspace in favor of smaller conservative outlets, according to Brian Stelter. Now, I'm going to seriously have to contend whether or not these conservative outlets are smaller, okay? You look at CNN's ratings these days, you look at the Washington Post. Again, that's debatable, right? That's really questionable. But nonetheless, here is Brian Stelter trying to spin the entire situation into a way bigger deal than it is. Again, this is a normal precedent. Like, this happens all the time. But nonetheless, the Washington Post, CNN, The Hill, and The War Zone will lose workspace at the Pentagon this year under an expanded media rotation program instituted by Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth's press office. The rotation makes room for a number of right-wing and explicitly pro-Trump media outlets that have not had workspace at the Pentagon before. And I'm sure they're going to make a really big deal out of that. But guess what, Brian Stelter? Believe it or not, I know you're like, trying to cling on to your fellow geriatrics, basically, in the news media world, right? You're way behind. But yeah, just because they've not had workspace in the Pentagon before, guess what? The media is changing now. Okay, the only news does not come from a small handful of corporate networks. Okay, so that's just the situation. But nonetheless, the Friday night announcement was criticized by some journalists as a way to score political points and penalize tough-minded news outlets. Tough-minded, CNN apparently. The changes will not only affect workspaces, changes will only affect workspaces, not credentials, so journalists from the affected outlets will not lose access to military officials and press briefings. And that's exactly my point. Right? You guys are trying to make such a big deal out of this. You're claiming you're being censored because we don't have an office anymore. We only have the normal press credentials that everyone else has. Okay, what am I supposed to be sad for you? Am I supposed to cry? We lost our bougie, very cool, very high status office. We're only regular journalists now, right? You have like these very successful, very wealthy people at these outlets living in DC crying because they're being treated like normal journalists and not like VIP journalists. Okay, they took away my VIP. I don't get to ride around in a limousine anymore. No, like, okay, really? Oh, who the heck cares? But nonetheless, CNN said in a statement that CNN's mission to report on the Department of Defense and U.S. military will continue regardless of office arrangements. We will not be deflected from our duty to hold all three fairly and fully to account. When it was announced a week ago, the rotation program called for 4 outlets to give up their space this year, and effective later this month, One America News will replace NBC News for the remainder of the year, Breitbart will replace NPR, the New York Post will replace the New York Times, and Huffington Post will replace Politico. Well, there you go, right? It's not just all conservative outlets. You guys have the Huffington Post. The Huffington Post is probably even more far left than CNN. So there you go. You still have balance, right? And in fact, you have real balance because before it was just 4 liberal networks under the Biden administration. And now, even under a conservative administration, we still have the token left-wing network there. So we're actually better. We actually have more respect, by the way, just saying, for press diversity here than the prior one did. But, according to Brian Stelter, the only form of free press is liberal free press. But anyways, Huffington Post has a progressive bent, but the other 3 beneficiaries are all Trump-boosting brands that are notably smaller than the outlets they are replacing. Okay, well, CNN, you're not exactly the biggest outlet these days, like I said, so I'm not sure you should be talking. You want to compare yourself to your rival? Look at Fox News' numbers and look at yours, okay? I'm not like a big defender of Fox News, but if you want to really get into the rating measuring contest, you're not exactly going to win. Okay, just saying. But anyways, here he goes, basically, long article crying all about it. And meanwhile, I just want to point this out. They're so-called speaking truth to power, right? That's how they frame themselves. Oh, we're just like the muckrakers of the 1800s. We really expose corruption and the political establishment and all that stuff. Well, meanwhile, I just want to point out that while Brian Stelter is claiming that he's doing such a great job of holding people accountable within the government, you have CNN right here, as you can see, just defending defending the military-industrial complex, right? This is so ironic, so interesting. You remember when the news media was supposed to stand up against that type of stuff? Now you have them writing articles like this. Defense officials fear the impending Pentagon firings could break law and hurt military readiness. Of course, this comes as Pete Hegseth, President Trump, and Elon Musk are announcing that they're going to be auditing the Pentagon. Apparently, they're looking at an 8% budget cut, which is fully understandable and respectable considering the fact that the Pentagon, some of it does go to defense, but massive amounts obviously go to very corrupt contracts with the defense industry. They go to waste, they go to fraud. A lot of times, the Pentagon loses billions of dollars where they don't even know where it went. I don't even understand how that happens. Someone is embezzling it, right? So, and this has been an issue for years. By the way, liberals back in the day, this is the great irony, used to be against the Pentagon. They used to be against defense spending. They used to say, we need to reduce our defense spending because a lot of it is corrupt and unnecessary. And yet, years later, now that is happening, now that the conservatives are the ones doing it, because it turns out we actually agree in some ways with the liberals of like 2006 in the sense that, yeah, there's mass corruption in the Pentagon. Yeah, under Bush, under Obama, under all these establishment politicians, the military-industrial complex is thriving at the taxpayers' expense. We're going to do something about it. Well, now you have CNN basically parroting the George Bush 2003 talking points of, oh, if we cut down on defense spending by eliminating waste, fraud, and abuse, that's going to hurt our national security. The military needs it. The defense needs it. It's like, no, we're not talking about essential stuff. We're talking about corruption, right? And that's what it's a code word for. These people who are defense contractors or work very closely, or they want to be future defense contractors, are saying, what? You want to take away my $2 trillion contract that most of which is just going to salary and waste and fraud and embezzlement? You're going to hurt the U.S. military. You're going to hurt our readiness. It's state propaganda. That's what it is. It's state propaganda. No, there's massive waste and abuse and fraud going on at the Pentagon. And here you have CNN supposedly speaking such truth to power. They become the network of the neocons. Okay, neocon news network right there. No, not going to happen. Glad you guys got evicted. It's very hilarious to see and have fun having to actually stand and walk around for a living instead of having a nice cushy office chair to sit in. Nonetheless, guys, let me know your thoughts on all of this in the comment section down below. Be sure to leave a like on this video, subscribe if you are new, and until next time, God bless and peace.